a moment to worship together. There's no shadow that has ever overcome your life, and there is no rival that could ever stand against your might. You've always been with us. Every battle you already won, oh, we've already won. There is no weapon that has ever had to walk on you, and there is no army with the power to conquer you. You've always been with us. Every battle you've already won, we've already won. Show me one thing you get to. Show me one thing you get to. He's the God of the breakthrough. Anything is possible. Show me one thing that's too hard. Show me what else he can't conquer. He's the God of the breakthrough, and anything is possible. It's possible. Hey, there is a kingdom that's advancing at the speed of light, and in his kingdom, every dead thing is bound to rise. Oh, God, our Redeemer, he is faithful to revive. Oh, he will revive. Yeah. Show me one thing he can't do. Show me a mountain he can't move. He's the God of the breakthrough, and anything is possible. Do you believe? Show me one thing that's too hard. Show me what else he can't conquer. He's the God of the breakthrough, and anything is possible. It's possible. Come on, put your hands together. I will turn into praise. Shake off despair as I sing out your name. A victory dance, I will dance out of it. I will crush disappointment and break every chain. Oh, all of my fear I will turn into praise. Shake off despair as I sing out your name. A victory dance, I will dance out of it. I will crush disappointment and break every chain. Oh, all of my fear I will turn into praise. Shake off despair as I sing out your name. A victory dance, I will dance out in faith. I will crush disappointment. Show me one thing he can't do. Show me a mountain he can't move. He's the God of the breakthrough, and anything is possible. Show me one thing that's too hard. Show me what else he can't conquer. He's the God of the breakthrough, and anything is possible. It's possible. Anything is possible. Anything is possible.
What's up, Venture family? I'm Vincent, Church Online pastor here at Venture Church, and we're glad that you decided to worship with us on today. And we're going to start today a little differently. If you're watching with us on Facebook or YouTube or anywhere else that is not online.venturechurch.org, I'm gonna give you a chance to fix that. Below, you'll see a QR code, you'll see a link where you can join us over on the platform. There you'll find myself, a host of volunteers, and the rest of your venture community there waiting, willing, and ready to engage with you. So join us over on the platform today. Last week, if you missed last week, man, it was a great experience. We got a chance to share an awesome story, and we talked about the power of invitation. You also missed a little bit of a challenge, one that we're gonna start this experience with by me simply asking, who is your one? And if you're with us last week, you know I asked that question and I challenged you to bring your one to this experience. So if you're watching with us on the platform, take a second now to share this experience. You'll see a button below where you can easily do that. And if you're not on the platform, use the QR code or the link below to bring not only yourself, but your one to this experience today. Join us over on the platform. You do not want to miss the accessibility, the amenities, and the atmosphere that is our Church Online community. Speaking of community, Jones County Campus Pastor Kyle Warren is bringing a message today on the importance of community. And I love the way he puts it. He says that we're every human heart, we're searching not only for a community, right, but for calling. Not only for a purpose, but a people to live that purpose out with. And I'm excited to unpack that message with you today. It's going to be one that I feel is going to be very powerful and meaningful to you. So I'm looking forward to that message on today. We also want you to know that Love Your Neighbor is right around the corner, and we don't want you to miss out on what you can do to impact your community through serving. If you're interested in Love Your Neighbor, or maybe you don't even know what that is, it's just Venture Church's way of saying, hey, let's get out in the community and let's love on our people, both near and far. So you'll see a button, you'll see a QR code, a link below that will direct you to that webpage to give you all the information that you need to know about what Venture Church is doing to love on our neighbors. There on the webpage, you will find all the different anchor projects for all of our physical campuses. And I'm excited to announce next week what our Church Online community will be doing for our anchor project for Love Your Neighbor. So go ahead and interact with that QR code, that link below. Get over to that webpage and find out what you can do to love on your neighbor next week. Also, we're about to get into a time of worship. I'm gonna get into that message from Kyle, and then I want you to join me right back here for you and I to unpack some practical ways, right? Some practical steps that you can take to biblical community, to investing in a people that is here for you, that is for you, and that wants to help you continue in your walk to know, love, and follow Jesus. We'll see you in the chat.
Still you give yourself away.
no wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming after me. There's no shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. There's no wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming after me. There's no shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. There's no wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming after me. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. Oh, it chases me down, fights till I fall, leaves the 99. I couldn't earn it, I don't deserve it, still you give yourself away. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. How deep the Father's love for us, how vast beyond all measure, that He should give His only Son to make a wrench His treasure. How great the pain of shearing loss. The Father turns His face away, as wounds which mar the chosen one bring many sons to glory. Behold the man upon a cross, my sin upon His shoulders. Ashamed, I hear my mocking voice call out among the scoffers. It was my sin that held Him there until it was accomplished. His dying breath hath bought me life. I know that it is finished.
guys so much for worshiping with us. You may go ahead and take your seat.
My name is Kellen Lane, and I am the house church pastor at Burnt Bridge Road. And what it means to be available is to be free to let God use you. Kind of my story, when I think back to it, is that I started with Venture about 3 years ago through an invite from a coworker, but I really didn't start getting involved until 2 years ago when I went through your venture and started working with our student ministry, and then also getting involved within growth groups. And, within that, it was so great because I could choose, what I wanted to do. And I was able to kind of schedule out my week. And a few months later, we were starting up house churches. It was one of those things in which they were telling us about. And everybody was really excited about it. But within it, I was asked to step up to be a house church pastor. And within that, I had a lot of reservations because I was like, I can't do this. Like, this is not me. That's not something which I necessarily want to do. My schedule's too busy. So when it was asked initially, I turned them down. Like, I didn't feel like that was something I wanted to do. I was like, I'll just fit it within my schedule on Wednesday nights. I'll just go to house churches on Wednesday nights. And then about a month and a half into it, it was time for us to multiply. And even then, when they asked me again, I still had a lot of reservations. It was still like, well, I got this going on. I was making excuses not to step into it. And when you think about it, and it even hurts me to say, I was saying I'm too busy for God. Like, I'm too busy to fit you in my schedule. And that really hurts. Even like when I think about it, I'm like, you putting something else before God. And I think that's what helped me make the decision of wanting to step into that role, or being willing to step into that role. Don't get me wrong, it was still uncomfortable, it was challenging, and I was thinking, I don't know if I'm necessarily qualified, but God knows what the need is, and He set me up with, two great people to help me with that. I really hadn't turned back and looked back since. It's a room full of people that are so different from each other. It ranges from age from 5 all the way up to the golden years with people being there. And it's just been amazing to be able to see us all gel together, be really family. We're family. Y'all my ride, they're my ride or dies. Like, I'll do anything for them. You call me up and I'm there for you. It is investment from my standpoint of, hey, I got to be available for my people. But it's so great to be able to do that and to be somebody's willing to let me step into that role and do that for sure. A couple of weeks ago, Jeff had mentioned something that really resonated with me within the message. And one of those things was, hey, we try to really put God on our calendar, but we're really on God's calendar. We need to put ourselves on His calendar and make ourselves available. And I think within house church, that is something that we need to do. But as Christians, as Christ followers, we really need to make sure that we're doing that every day, where we look for those opportunities and not see those as inconveniences within our schedule, and just make ourselves available for God to use us and step into that role and really embrace that within what He has in store for us.
Well, hey, welcome to Venture Church. Man, I'm so glad that you're here today, wherever you are at, watching, hanging out with us, whether you're in the room, watching online. Man, it's going to be a good day. Listen, if it is your first time worshiping with us, hanging out with us today, or if me and you just haven't had a chance to meet yet, my name's Kyle. I'm part of the team here, and I've really been excited about today, okay? Because over the past, several months, God has been showing me some things and really just kind of like putting some language around some things for me that I haven't had a chance to unpack yet, that I've kind of been sitting on. And so I'm excited to unpack it with you today. And so look, I don't think it's a secret to any of us that we are a people and we are a culture of people that loves movements. Right? Like everywhere we turn, everywhere we look, almost at the turn of every single page in our culture, there seems to be a new movement that we can be a part of, right? Like a new fight we can take up, a new stand we can take. And it runs the gambit of issues, right? I mean, we can be about a movement, we can take a stand against war or social injustice or some kind of reform or paper straws. Like it's anything, right? Well, we can be about it. We can stand for, we can stand against almost anything. And listen, that's not new, right? Like that's not a new cultural thing. That's not a new phenomenon. I mean, that's always kind of been a thing for people, for humankind. We have found things to fight for, to fight against, right? It's just kind of who we are. But what's really amazing to me is I think the depth of which we define ourselves in these things, right? And what I mean by that is it almost feels like we've lost the ability to see ourselves and to see other people as individuals. Rather, we see ourselves and we see other people through these lenses, through these titles of these movements, right? Like I'm pro this, I'm anti this, and we find our own definition in those things. And so much so, I think we've even begun to find other people's value in these things, right? Like a person's value becomes the sum of things that they are for or against and how those things compare to what we are for or against. And so one of the things that God has been showing me in all this and kind of helping me put some language around is that regardless of what movement we're a part of, regardless of what battle, what fight we decide to take up, we're all on the same journey. And really, even within the same battles and the same fights, regardless of what side of the aisle we stand on, we're really on the same journey. You see, I believe there are certain things that we all, as people, we all crave, we all desire, that we all hunger for. There's certain just like innate desires within us. And some of that, two of those things, I think we all desire calling and we all desire community. Like, I mean, isn't it true that we all want purpose in life? I mean, isn't it true that like we all want to know that we have purpose, that we have meaning, that our life is about something good, that we're making a positive impact, we're making a positive difference in the world around us and the people around us? We want calling, we want purpose. We want to know that our life has purpose. And man, it is so much more enjoyable to pursue that purpose with other people. To know that we're not in it alone, we're not in the struggle alone. It is why we attach ourselves to certain organizations and to certain brands, right? Because we identify with their purpose. We identify with their sense of why, and we want to be associated with other people that share that identity. It's why we choose certain activities. I mean, think about it. The reason so many of us love things like travel ball and CrossFit is because it gives us a certain sense of purpose. And I know that's crazy to say it that way, but it's true, right? I mean, it gives us a tangible thing to pursue after. A better body, a championship ring. They give rings now, by the way, which is incredible. We want that thing. Like, it gives us a thing to pursue. But not only does it give us this achievement to pursue, it places people around us to pursue it with. I pay $10 a month to go to the gym. And some people will pay over $100 to go to a CrossFit box. Why? Because it places community around them. There's like a special value around community and people in pursuit. And listen, hear me say this. I do not think that is a bad thing. I actually think it's a picture of how God wired us and how God designed us. You go all the way back to creation. Go back to the book of Genesis and where God created mankind. God created man and he placed him in the garden, and then what? He gave us work. He gave us a purpose to be about. Work is a good thing. Purpose, calling is a good thing. All the way back in the garden, we see this picture where God has desired to partner with mankind in cultivating his creation. It's always been there. And so God gave us a purpose. He gave us a work to help cultivate and sustain the life that he had created in the garden. And God said, this is good. It's a good thing. But then he stepped back and said, man, you know, it's not good. It's not good that man is alone. And what's always kind of bothered me with that, if I'm honest with you, is that man wasn't alone. Man wasn't alone in the Garden of Eden. He had perfect community with God. He walked in perfect harmony with God in the Garden of Eden. But what God was saying there was that it wasn't good that man was alone in pursuit of his purpose. And so God created not just another human being, God created a helper, a co-worker, a companion in the calling. Another person to achieve the purpose together, right? And then sin entered. And with the fall and with sin and with destruction, God's perfect creation became distorted and twisted. And ever since that point, you and I have been on the same journey. We've been on a journey of trying to find that deep sense of satisfaction and longing that we all have for calling, for purpose, and for community, for companionship. And so as a church, when we begin to ask questions like, well, what does it look like to follow Jesus? It's kind of what this series is all about. What does it look like to follow Jesus? We come back to basically these same realities, right? Like to follow Jesus is to live a life, is to live a pursuit marked by these two things, marked by calling and marked by community. In Matthew chapter 28, Jesus gives us our calling. He gives us a purpose to live. If you've been around the church, we'll call this a lot of times the Great Commission, the Great Commissioning, where Jesus sends out his people for a purpose, for a work, for a calling, right? He tells us to go to the ends of the earth, reaching all people, teaching them to obey all that he has commanded. I love that. You see, our purpose and our calling is to go find the people, go to the ends of the earth, go find the people that are far from him and teach them to obey all that he's commanded. See, to be a follower of Jesus isn't to have all of the right knowledge, right? What Jeff Clark likes to say, be able to win Jesus Jeopardy. It's not to be able to abstain from all the really bad things like smoking and rock and roll, right? To follow Jesus is to live a life of obedience to what he has commanded. And listen, that's not so that we can be sheep, right? It's not so that we can obey all of the rules blindly, but rather understand that Jesus has placed guardrails around us to live a full life, to live a life full of joy and peace and satisfaction. Like that's what he desires in us, like a good father, like a good parent would place guardrails around their child for safety, for a good and full life. Jesus placed guardrails around us to experience a good and full life. And so following Jesus is about obeying what he's commanded to experience that full life, right? But he gives us, as followers, he gives us a purpose, a calling to take this message of hope, of joy, of peace, to take this message to the ends of the earth, to a world that desperately needs it. So the way we phrase that here at Venture, right? You'll hear us talk about a vision. Our vision for the church is to be a church for the unchurched. Because the message of hope, the message of grace that is the gospel, is the story of Jesus, is a message not just for people, a certain people that have a certain background, but all people. The people that are far from him, to reach them, to do whatever it takes to reach somebody, to teach them, to obey all that he's, to lead them to know, love, and follow Jesus. But the truth we have to own today, the truth you and I have to own today, is that ultimately as we talk about our calling, we have to understand that our community will affect that. Our community will affect our calling. That our purpose, the purpose we live out in life, is ultimately influenced by the people we place around us. Let me show you what I'm talking about. Acts chapter 15. We could have went, any place in Scripture, and I think found this truth. But Acts chapter 15, we've been reading through the book of Acts in our reading plan at the church. And so Acts chapter 15 says this. It's verse 36. It says, after some days, Paul said to Barnabas, the apostle Paul said to Barnabas, let us return and visit the brothers in every city where we proclaimed the word of the Lord and see how they are. See, Paul and Barnabas had been planting churches. They've been going to the ends of the earth, teaching people to obey all that he had commanded. And Paul says, let's go back and check on them. Verse 37, now Barnabas wanted to take with them John called Mark. We call him John Mark. But Paul thought best not to take with them one who had withdrawn from them in Pamphylia and had not gone with them to do all the work. No, man, Mark ain't been about all this with us. Verse 39, and there arose a sharp disagreement, a fight between Paul and Barnabas, so much so that they separated from each other. Barnabas took Mark with him and sailed away to Cyprus, but Paul chose Silas and departed, having been commended by the brothers to the grace of the Lord. Let me give you a little background of what's going on here, okay? Paul and Barnabas, like I said, Paul and Barnabas have been on the front lines of the Great Commission. They've been going to the ends of the earth, teaching people this message of hope that is Jesus, right? Teaching them to obey all that he's commanded, making disciples. They've been planting churches. Acts chapter 15, you go back and read earlier in the chapter, they've kind of taken aside from their journey and they've been a part of what's called the Jerusalem Council. And I'm not going to go into all the historical information there, but basically all of these church leaders come together for some decision-making time. That's kind of what it amounts to. You see, all of these people, all of these church leaders in the early New Testament church, they had a rich history in Judaism. They were of the Jewish faith and tradition, and as a part of that, they carried over many traditions and rules and rituals. And so they came together and said, hey, look, we're reaching a lot of people outside of our tradition, outside of our rules and our rituals. And so we need to decide what kind of carries over to them. And they make this revolutionary decision. I mean, it's an incredible moment for the church where they decide collectively, hey, you know what? We should not make it difficult for people to know Jesus. And so Paul and Barnabas are a part of this moment. And man, it's a celebration and it's great joy. And so Paul says, look, we need to go back and we need to share this good news with these people we've been reaching. But then they get in this huge fight. How many of you know that just because you experience a win today doesn't mean you're not going to be in a battle tomorrow? Paul found himself in the middle of a battle of isolation, of being isolated from the person that he trusted the most. Like Barnabas is more than just a friend. I mean, Barnabas is like a coworker. He's a companion in his calling, in his purpose. I mean, these guys have been in the trenches together. And all of a sudden, this person he trusted the most is not with him anymore. When we have those people that are supposed to be in our corner and all of a sudden they stab us in the back. We have these people that, man, I trust this person with all that I am, and all of a sudden they break that trust. I don't know where to go. I don't know what to do. I don't know who I can trust or should I trust anyone anymore. And we begin to build up these walls, and these walls that feel like walls of protection that really become walls of isolation. That's where Paul found himself. The one he trusted the most is no longer with him. And look, if it's me, the way I'm wired, the way I work, you know what? Forget you, I'm at it alone, you know? Like if you're not in this with me, Barnabas, if I can't trust you, you don't want to be about this, fine, I'll show you. I don't need you to do this thing. That's not what Paul did. He said he chose Silas. Before he ever did anything else, he found another co-laborer in the purpose and the work in Silas. Why? Because Paul knew that the battles that take place in the trenches of life, man, they're just better fought together. That's why we'll say all the time, you'll hear us say this all the time, that we are better together, right? We need one another. Let me give you a little bit of life advice right here. See, temporary friendships are built around temporary targets. Temporary friendships are built around temporary targets, but biblical community is based on an eternal purpose. See, temporary friendships lead to temporary results, but biblical community leads to growth. It leads to personal growth. And listen, I'm not saying that temporary friendships are bad. Some of the most influential people in my life were temporary friends that came out of temporary seasons. And I'm not saying like they've done something not to be friends or that I don't want them to be friends, but just in all honesty, like our friendship was built around a season of life that no longer exists. And like we're not in the trenches of life together anymore. But man, they were highly influential in my life. My fear is not that we have temporary friends or temporary seasons. My fear is that we are going to make an eternal-sized investment in temporary results, in temporary targets. You see, when we talk about community, we use this word investment a whole lot. We say part of following Jesus is to invest in community. And we use that word invest intentionally because community is going to cost you some things. It just is. You cannot escape that fact. Community, people, habits, activities, they will cost you time, they will cost you resources, they will cost you attention, right? It will cost you some things. You cannot get away from that. My fear for us as a church, my fear for us as people, as followers of Jesus is that we are going to make an investment of eternal significance, that we are going to invest our first fruits, the best of our time, our attention, and our resources into temporary seasons and temporary targets and temporary results. Man, what I want you to see so much today is that your investment into community is an investment in so much more than friends. Your investment in community is in so much more. Let me show you Hebrews chapter 10, verse 24 and 25 says this. The writer of Hebrews says, and let us consider how to stir up one another to love and good works. It's the idea of like challenging. I want to challenge you to do more, to do good things, not neglecting to meet together because being together is important. That's the habit of some people, but we need to consider how to encourage one another all the more as you see the day drawing near. You see, your investment in community is ultimately an investment in yourself. Now follow me on this, okay? Understand what I'm talking about. If we're going to experience the fullness of life, I mean, the fullness of life that God ultimately wants, that God ultimately desires for us, the fullness of life that we all desire and crave, that full joy, that complete sense of satisfaction and security and peace, man, if we're going to experience that in life, that fullness of purpose, of calling that we all want, listen, we do not need another self-help book. We need people that are going to help. We need people that are going to be in the trenches with us. We need people that are going to stir us up to love and good works. That's going to challenge us to take a step. That's going to challenge us to grow. That's going to challenge us to do something different than we've always done. We need people that are going to encourage us in the difficult seasons of life, that are going to help us find that sustaining we need when we can't find it in ourselves, right? We need people. So our investment in community is an investment in people that's going to be alongside of us. It's an investment back in ourselves. And as you look around to the people and the places and the things that you're investing in, I hope you ask this question, like, is this a place that's investing back in me? Is this a person? Is this a place? Is this a thing that's giving back, that's giving that sense of challenging, that's giving that sense of encouragement back? And if you look around and you say, no, I don't think that, then one of two things is happening. Either you have built temporary friendships that are built around a temporary goal. The only reason you're friends is because you're pursuing that better body or because you're pursuing that championship. It's not about one another. Or you've spent too long consuming, and it's time you contribute. You've been looking for all the encouragement. You've been looking for all the sustaining, and now is a season where you need to give that back. You need to give more of that encouragement and that challenge back. Your investment in community is also an investment in your future. Now look, we all have a responsibility to invest in the next generation, right? To raise up the next generation. We all share that responsibility, but parents, let me talk to you for just a second, okay? Because you have a unique responsibility to shepherd your child's investment. Just like you are spending your time and your resources and your attention, parents, you're spending that for your children as well. You are spending their time and their resources and their attention. And not only are you spending that for them in a young age, but you're teaching them in that season how to spend that in an older age. You're shepherding that for them. And so when you think about your child and when you think about the person you want them to be, and I'm not talking about their job, I'm not talking about their social standing, I'm talking about their character, like who they are, the life you want them to live. You have to evaluate, are you placing them around people? Are you placing them in situations? Are you cultivating within them the character you want them to live? When I was 14, 15 years old, couldn't drive yet, spending every other weekend getting absolutely drunk, building addictions before I was ever fully formed, with adults that were responsible for cultivating my character, but instead were more concerned with being my friends. Parents, they don't need you to be their friends. They need you to cultivate a character, a life worth living within them. It wasn't the dugout that brought my life back from destruction. I grew up playing baseball, loved it, spent a lot of time on the field, made a lot of great friends. But it wasn't those friends that saved me. It was the community that had been built around me at church. I mean, thank God that my mother made church a priority in my life. Because I'm completely convinced without that I would not be standing here today. Your investment in community is an investment not only in your future, but your child's future, your family's future. Your investment in community is also, this is the last point, it's kind of the point of this whole series. Your investment in community is also an investment in your purpose. Acts chapter 2 is where we see the New Testament church really being formed. It's where we see the beginning of the New Testament church, which, by the way, happens in community. It happens in living rooms. It happens as people who are following Jesus gather together. But Acts chapter 2, verse 42 says that the people that were following Jesus, that they devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching and to the fellowship, They gave their time, they gave their attention. They were breaking bread and they were sharing prayers together. They were sharing meals and prayers, and all came upon every soul, and many wonders and signs were being done through the apostles. You see, the New Testament church began when the followers of Jesus aligned their calling and their community, when the purpose that Jesus had gave them lined up with the people that they were placing in their lives. When those two things came together, not only did they receive miracles, they became the miracle. Many signs, many wonders were being done through them. Life change began to take place. You know, we love movements. And my fear is that we've become desensitized to these quick movements that are here today and they're gone tomorrow, and it's a big deal right now, and it's all over social media, but no one ever hears about it anymore. It's just a thing that just pops up real quick, and then it's going to go away, so why really even pay attention to it? And somewhere along the way, we have lost sight of the fact that the church is the greatest life-giving movement that has ever existed. That this moment right here, we are a part of the greatest life-giving movement that has ever been. Like in this moment, you might be a part of church and think, man, this is not church I know. Like this is new, it's shiny, it's different. And while it might look that way, the reality is in this moment, we are tied to centuries worth of life change. And this is a movement that has not stopped and is not going to stop. Jesus gave us that promise that nothing, not even the gates of hell, can stand against this church. We are a part of a life-giving, of an eternity-changing movement. You see, listen, if you are looking, wherever you are in your journey, if you're trying to discover Jesus for the first time, man, I'm so glad you're here. But I need to be honest with you in this moment. Like if you're looking for a life free of problems, Jesus isn't it. But if you're looking for a life filled with purpose, hey, then you're in the right place. A life of calling, a life of community. And that's what he's called us to be about. So look, my challenge as we wrap up is very, very simple. We've made investing in community as simple as we can for you. We talk about house church a lot, right? Like house church is how you invest in biblical community at Venture Church. House church is a gathering of people that's going to take place on Wednesday nights. It's going to take place online, wherever you are. There's a house church in a community, in a neighborhood, online, where you can gather together with people for more than friendships, for biblical community. For purpose-filled community, for life change, for community change, for eternity change, where you can gather with people that are going to invest in you, that you can invest back in. And so my challenge is very simple. It's to invest. Invest in a community that's going to invest back. Be a part of a house church. And listen, if you are a part of a house church, understand I'm not asking you to attend a house church gathering on Wednesday night. I'm asking you to invest well. To invest your time, your resources, your attention in a community that's going to invest back in you. Take 6 months. It really doesn't matter. Pick a time. Take 6 months. You're going to invest more than that. I've picked on baseball a lot. You're going to invest more in that in dance. And invest in something that's going to invest back in you. And watch. Watch what God does, not only in you, but through you. Let me pray for us, church. Lord, we come before you, God, I thank you. God, I thank you for the purpose, for the calling, for the mission that you've laid out in front of us. God, I thank you for the community that you place around us, that you allow us to be a part of community, that you allow us to be a part of a people that love you, that want to invest back in us. And so, God, I pray that you will challenge us where we spend our investment, where we spend our time and our attention and our resources, that you will challenge us where we spend that you will bring us to a place of conviction to invest well in your purpose, in your calling. And God, through that, we pray for life change. Pray for eternal change. We pray for our communities and our neighborhoods to be changed. All for your glory and for your honor. Amen.
I had a conversation this past week with someone about friendships. And we discussed a gamut of different things. We discussed dynamics, we discussed commitment, we discussed longevity. And he began to talk about how this specific friendship was different, that there was a level of community, a level of care, a specific genuineness to this specific friendship, unlike he'd experienced before. And it took me back to my college days. Maybe you can vibe with this. You go to college and you have this new sense of identity, and you find a core group of friends that you feel like, hey, this is forever. This is for life. And I had that same sort of experience. I had found a circle of people that I connected with on a level unlike anything I had before. But I think that you can agree with me when we say we look back over those friendships, right? And I think that I learned two things. God puts people in your life for a reason, and he puts people in your life for a season. And it's up to us to kind of stay woke and be keen, right, to what God is doing in our lives in and through us, and what we are to be to that specific core group of friends. And I'm happy to say that now, multiple years later, that the majority of those people are still in my life. And I'm well aware of the role that I play in that friendship. But imagine what life would have been like if I would have invested my time, my resources that Kyle just talked about, into something that God didn't have for me. I love the way he says it. I'm gonna read this quote. Kyle says, temporary friendships are built around temporary targets. Don't make eternal-sized commitments on temporary things. And that's just period. I mean, that's with your life. That's with your everyday decisions. That's with your schedule, right? And I love that he says that we're struggling, right? We're hurting. We're all going through something. Maybe today you're even feeling alone. Maybe you're feeling lonely. But don't confuse being lonely with alone. Maybe you're struggling today. Maybe there's some sort of hurt that you're going through. But you don't have to do that alone. That's what today's message is about, finding biblical community. And the way that you can do that is by finding your house church. Find your home. Maybe you're looking for a group of friends. You find that in house church. Maybe you're looking for a group of believers to build your life after. You can do that in a house church. No, it's not a group. It's not a clique. House church is home. So take a second to find your home today. You'll see a QR code below. Kyle says it this way. He says, if you want to be a part of something bigger than yourself, then you need more people than just yourself. So take a second right now to find your house church home. We also want you to connect with us at this time. Maybe you have questions. Maybe you just have a prayer request, whatever that may be. You can find that here with us as well. So take a second right now to engage with us, to connect with us, for us to answer those questions for you on today. We also never want this time to pass without thanking you for your generosity. Maybe you're a first-time guest here today at Venture, and we don't want you to feel compelled to give. Your time is appreciated enough. But if that is something that God has placed on your heart, you'll find a QR code below that will direct you through the different ways that you can give to the mission and vision of what God is doing here at Venture Church. Don't forget, come back next week. We'll be talking about and dropping our big thing for Love Your Neighbor here for Church Online. And we don't want you to miss out on that. And we'll be back for part 4 of our series called Available. See you next week.